pictures. Souls terrifying.
Welcome back to Lost Legacies.
A Hidden City Book Company production.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Sam.
I just want to say real quick that we record these episodes usually about a week before we upload them online.
Yes.
So yeah, you know, by the time you're watching this, it's already a week later. But as of today, that we're recording this, filming this, October 8th, it is the Lost Legacies 4-year anniversary.
This is the 4-year anniversary?
This is the 4-year anniversary, Sam.
Oh my god, why didn't you tell me? We would have done something completely different.
Because I just knew that we wanted to watch Salem's Lot for the anniversary. I just knew it was going to be a special episode.
No!
And it has nothing to do with the fact that I didn't realize it was the anniversary until last night. So, yeah.
Oh man,
it's 4 years. We'll do something big for the 5-year. You know,
we said that last year.
Yeah, that's true. We did.
Here's the thing. I'm gonna say it. We're bad at anniversaries.
That's true.
We're bad at remembering the dates of anniversaries. Because we totally missed the Lost, the 20 year.
That's because I was sick. Because we had planned on doing some kind of live stream for the 20th anniversary of Lost, but that was when I was in the middle of COVID. So that one sucked because I really wanted to do something.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll get a pass on that one, but man. Well, happy 4 years, Matt. How do you feel?
Pretty good. I like the way the show's kind of progressed. You know, the way we're still trying new things. We're still watching Lost somehow 4 years later.
Hey, you know, we found a niche and we're gonna stay in it as long as we can.
That's true. So I'm looking up right now 4-year anniversary gifts. So let's see what's the 4-year theme. The traditional one is fruit and flowers.
Oh, yeah.
The modern one is appliances.
No.
Yeah.
I guess.
That's not fun.
Yeah.
And the gemstone is blue topaz.
Oh.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us for our 4th anniversary. We'll see you next year.
For our 4th anniversary on an episode where we're not talking about the smash hit ABC series that was Lost.
Yeah.
That's
all right.
We'll get them next time.
However, what we can talk about though is what were we doing this past weekend, Sam?
We were at a small little convention selling my comic.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. It's weird. So it's weird because the function didn't have a name, or like it was just really weird. It was Casa, but Casa is the name of the organization we were with, and Casa. I learned that there's two in San Antonio, and the one that we were with is Comic Artists San Antonio.
That's right. What's the other one?
Yeah. It's kind of like a Big Brothers Big Sisters kind of group. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. But no, we were with Comic Artists San Antonio promoting and selling my comic book that I co-wrote with frequent guest and friend of the pod, Miguel Martinez. He's my best friend since high school, and we finally decided to make a comic. And yeah, we were there promoting it. The comic is called Gets a Cult, and it was really fun. Had a blast. It was kind of like a work day, you know. This is like a 7-hour day or something, but yeah, it was fun.
And I was surprised because I knew nothing about this. but it was a
I
lot bigger than the one we went to in Dallas. We went to the Latino Comic Con in Dallas,
yeah, we were in
and
the Texas Latino Comic Con.
that was cool. I was impressed that for our first con. But this one was even bigger. I was like, oh wow.
yeah, yeah.
It's just weird because I didn't see a lot of promotions or stuff. Like I did, but not as much as the last one. So
Yeah.
I didn't know what to expect, and this one was like in a hotel somewhere. So I'm like, all right, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And it was huge. I was like, dang. And I was kind of there for moral support, you know.
Yeah.
And I had to go break change and bring food, but that also means I got to walk the floor, and I bought a lot of cool stuff.
That's
You
true.
know?
That's true.
So yeah, just from
Yeah.
cool
You
people.
bought that shirt?
Yeah, I did. I don't have the vendor's info on me. I'll try and find it, put it in the description or something. But yeah.
Nice.
So it was cool. It was fun. Found some cool comics, and it was just cool to see a lot of people who were local. There were people who weren't, but a lot of them were, and just from the kind of outsider perspective, it was kind of cool to see the same issues you and Mickey were having. Okay, issues isn't the right word when you're talking about comic books. The same problems or hurdles you and Mickey were facing, like everyone else was.
Yeah.
You know, so that was really interesting, and then just to see how long it's actually taking independent artists to make 3 issues. I met a lot of people who they've been doing this for a few years and they just got issue 3 out. You know, I was like, oh, that's kind of the boat y'all are in. Like it takes a long time. And COVID really screwed everything up as well, because there's a lot of people who started right before, and you wouldn't think like it's as an artist, you would think you would be fine in isolation working on your thing, but still like it's set everyone back behind like at least a year, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, man, so in a way it was kind of validating, you know, it's like, okay, these weren't just, you know, I don't think you guys were making amateur mistakes or anything, but it's like, these aren't just mistakes that like y'all accidentally ran into. It's like, no, like every indie comic artist or author is facing these same troubles.
Yeah.
So it was cool. But then also talking to different people about how like their successes and what's working, and kind of comparing and seeing what works for who and what doesn't, you know, and you know, a lot of them crowdfunded their projects. A lot of them didn't. So that was really cool. And guys, I don't like to be social, but at the cons, like I go to every vendor just because like I'm on a shopping spree. And if they tell me hi, I gotta talk. You know, I'm like, hey, what's up? So the cool ones I end up talking with and just seeing what they're making, and I just love meeting people who are passionate about something and then like doing something with that. And then if it's cost effective, I'll purchase it. Yeah. But I was very social this weekend, which was very out of the box for me.
You were.
So
proud of you.
Yeah, and that's why I got extremely sick the next day. My head hurts, guys.
Dude,
don't talk to me.
I got home and I could feel it in my throat. Like my voice it wasn't shot, but it was so like I don't know, it just hurt.
Yeah.
It hurt to talk, and then that carried over into the next day, and I was just I was just out of it, man.
Was that our first case of con fatigue?
I think so.
We're moving on up, dude.
We're moving on up.
It's also crazy because like in venues like that, there is no talking like this, like because it's so loud because everyone is smushed together. So we're shouting the whole time or yelling just to have a conversation, you know. So I totally get the raspy voice thing, and but it was fun, and it was cool to see just so many different people, different walks of life, a bunch of little kids. So yeah, that was cool. Yeah. But can't wait for the next one, and maybe we'll actually promote it. We didn't tell anyone that we were going to that. So whatever the next one is, we'll let you know, listeners, viewers.
So. I think I don't know. I was I was invited to apply to one that's another one that's happening in Austin pretty soon, but One, the deadline already closed, and then
Oh, it
two,
did.
yeah, it closed yesterday on Monday.
Oh, okay. Well,
But also I was just like, I don't know if it's I don't know if it's worth it. It was just at like a different time, and like it does seem really cool, and I think I'd like to go, but probably just to check it out, not to
well,
not to go
yeah.
promote anything. But
Like
but yeah,
I don't want to get into specifics or anything, but it was weird hours. That was my kind of hesitation. Like it was a weird time period of the day. I
yeah,
was like, okay, that's weird, especially if we're gonna have to drive up and drive back. Like Austin's so close, I don't want to stay the night there. But
yeah,
it was weird. Our listeners don't care about that stuff. But what you should care about, and what I really care about, is that it was really cool just running into familiar faces just from that first con. You
yeah,
know, made a lot of friends. We saw a few of them at this one. Now we made more friends, and I can't wait to see where we're gonna run into them again.
yeah. Me too.
So that's really cool just to see like that community and one grow, but then also like our little social networking grid grow as well. I'm like, man, that's really rad, and just it seems like everyone has each other's back. They're
Yeah,
comic books, especially indie comic books. It's so focused on the art because it's such a struggle. It's a
mhm,
struggle enough to work on a mainstream book. Forget it, man. If it's indie, it's like
yeah,
you don't do this for the money. You do it because you love it. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Exactly.
yeah. So yeah. So guys, we'll let you know whenever the next one is, so you can go check out Sam's comic. Um, it was rad.
Thank you.
And then I don't know. I gotta work on something. I gotta get something in the con. We'll see.
I know. I hope you write it.
There you go. But as for today, let's get into our 4-year anniversary conversation, Sam. We're
Uh-huh.
talking about Walter Hill's 1984 Streets of Fire. I wish that's what we should have done.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll do an episode of Streets of Fire later.
Hell yeah.
But today we're talking about the new 2024 Salem's Lot. Sam, why don't you introduce us?
Okay. So Salem's Lot, it's based off of the Stephen King novel of the same name. It was the second novel he ever wrote. Uh and it involves a small town somewhere in Maine who become embroiled and trapped by mysterious dark forces that uh spoiler alert, turn out to be an ancient vampire, and he's come to America to bleed us dry, essentially.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's a novel. Townsfolk have to try and rise up against him to fight him.
Well, I'm just gonna preface this by saying, I never read the novel. I
Hmm.
never watched any of the other versions.
Hmm.
So whatever I discuss, I feel like you're gonna have to be my guide here,
Okay.
because I don't know if I'm talking about something specific to this Salem's Lot or
Hmm.
just something that's like in all of them.
Okay.
So, but I've read nothing but negative reviews of this movie.
Which is
Uh,
fascinating because I've been seeing both like negative reviews and then an overwhelming amount of positive reviews, like
man,
4+ stars, and I'm like, oh, okay,
you and I
let's
are like in
calm
different
down.
worlds, because like the reviews we read and find are always total opposites.
Mm,
Like, I don't know, I think you're just more in tune with like that film world, like online. I'm not. I just kind of like stumble into stuff.
yeah.
So, I don't know, man. That's nuts
I
because
just I I just have a lot of people that I follow that I'm like if it's I enjoy reading reviews
Mhm,
for things even if it's something I haven't seen, and
mhm,
usually the people I follow do a good job of like not spoiling it or like tagging a spoiler, and
yeah.
then if it's interesting I'm like, hey, that sounds really cool, add it to the watch list, You
Yeah.
know, that's all I am. Like I could spend hours just reading what other people are writing about movies.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, like the fact that so many people were just like it was a I won't say it was like a clear divide, but like there were some that were like nope, bad, didn't like it. Some that were like, oh, I really loved it, this was great, and some that are just like, yeah, it was okay. Like I thought,
Yeah.
yeah, I just found like a really like big collection of reviews, kind of spanning the whole thing.
Hmm. Well, um, the ones I read were bad, and in talking to
Okay,
you and Mickey, it was bad. So I did not know what to expect going in.
yeah,
Uh, so I put my like I'll admit it was a little unfair. I went in with like my critics hat on because I was already expecting to not like this. Um,
yeah,
but lo and behold, like I liked it.
mhm,
I think it's not a bad movie by any means, but it's not great either. And I don't ever want to judge a movie because it's not great. Is it good? Yeah, it's a good movie.
mhm.
My issue is, and let's just get it out there, like kind of my number one complaint about this movie is like, what's the point?
Mhm.
This novel came out decades ago. The
Yeah,
movie
yeah.
and miniseries, right? There was a miniseries.
There were two.
Oh, they were both miniseries.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Both miniseries came out decades ago. Um, there was, again, I've never seen any of that or read it, but this movie, there was nothing about it that was like new or fresh. Coming from a guy who has never experienced anything Salem's Lot related, I just
Yeah,
like, okay, you watched and or read vampire stories and you made a vampire story. Like,
yeah.
there was nothing that's like, yeah, this is the 2024 version. I mean, I guess special effects maybe, but even then, I just like, I don't know what the point of this was. Like money, like because I
That's
don't
kind of what
see
it comes down to. Yeah.
any creative or artistic reasoning to do this. It just feels like a retread of every. Now, okay, I haven't seen any of Salem's Lot, but I am familiar with vampires, and I usually dig vampire movies and stories, and I see a lot of the same tropes from
Mm-hmm.
those films and
Mm-hmm.
stories in this. So I have no doubt when Stephen King's book came out, it was fresh and it was new and it was banging or
Yeah,
banging.
yeah.
Same thing with the miniseries,
Yeah.
but it's like we're so far down the vampire rabbit hole at this point. It just seems weird, to just retread something like
Yeah.
that. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
Yeah. You've hit upon the thing that I think makes me upset more than it just not being exactly like the book. You
yeah.
know, I'll I'll preface this that Salem's Lot is still technically like very new to me.
Hmm.
I read the book last year for the first time, and I really loved it, really enjoyed it. Saw the 70s mini series by Toby Hooper, and I thought it was fine. Um, I can appreciate it. I can see why it was a classic, but I was like, okay, yeah, like I think this
Yeah.
is a thing that could be improved upon. Uh, so then when the trailer came out for this, I was like, oh, this is cool. This is rad. I'm really pumped for it. Um, I think you really hit the nail on the head there because it's like this is this is a story that is again like decades old, and we're retelling it again, but we're telling it for a modern audience, and the modern audience is already familiar enough with the vampire on film that the so much so and I think the thing is that we've had so many things that are inspired by or harken back to what Stephen King did that just redoing the book and adding a little bit of flourishes or changing up the entire third act isn't enough
Hmm.
because at this point we're living we're in a world post 30 days of night. which is
Yeah.
essentially Salem's Lot in Alaska. You know?
Kind of, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think
It's
it's a
like
much it's done a lot better.
yeah, it's done a lot better, and it's a much darker version. But yeah, like essentially, like that's sort of what it is. And then you also have, we're only a couple years out from Mike Flanagan's Midnight Mass,
Hmm. Hmm.
which again, like, does the thing that Salem's Lot does, but I think it reorganizes some of the themes, and it makes the characters a little bit more interesting, and we really get to see like how these people are affected. It's a character study first, and an apocalypse movie second,
That's what
you
I was
know.
missing. That's a big thing. There's so to perfectly sum up this movie was it happened in one shot.
Hmm.
So early on in the film, we get a pretty cool scene where Ben is just driving through town, and it's like the kind of the main street of town, and you see, and it's crowded. Like there's a lot of people, and it does this awesome thing of where the camera is inside the shops, and you see
Hmm.
Ben driving by in his car. So you see the shop owners doing their thing, just living their life, right, doing their thing. Later in the movie, it like it's never a thing of like, oh, there's less people. No, it's just like one scene to the next, and there's no people.
Yes.
And that's something else. I wish it was more gradual, but there is a scene where it's showing the empty street. They don't really do. I wanted them to mirror that first scene with Ben. Like I wanted the
Mm.
camera inside the empty shops. We never
Hmm.
really got that. We did get one shot though, which sums up everything, and it's where you see the dead body of like the mechanic, I think,
Hmm.
and everyone else is gone. And I'm thinking that it's lazy. That just sucks. That sums everything up. Who the hell's this
Yeah.
mechanic? No
Yeah.
idea. We never
Yeah.
met him. What I would have done, I would have done the exact same thing, but it would have been Susie's boss. It would have been in the office.
Oh yeah.
You see
Yeah.
his body
Larry.
in there, or you see him face down at his desk in a pool of blood. Even though it's a character we don't like, it's already someone established.
Hmm.
So we already know, like, ooh, it's not that I care about this character, but it's just like it's someone I know was just killed off screen, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And it's just that simple little tweak would have meant so much more. And I feel like the movie is filled with that. Like I feel like this has a solid foundation, and I'm guessing that solid foundation is just the story of Salem's Lot.
Yeah.
But
Essentially.
the actual framing of the house, the 2024 house, it's just not there, man. You know? And
Dude. Yeah.
I'm someone who I've said it over and over. I was nervous because I don't like scary movies, so I was nervous going into this. Uh wasn't scared one bit. There are a couple of jump scares that were just I don't know. There's only one that was cool. The other ones just kind of felt cheap to me.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, I'd rather watch a scary movie than a boring movie. Like, give us something, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and unfortunately, I preemptively chose this movie, because
Yeah.
I was just so looking forward to the movie, and I was like, I feel like I'm gonna have so much to talk about, so let's just watch it. And then after watching it, I texted Matt. I was like, well, this is gonna be fun.
Well, and you spoiled it last week when you told me it was a vampire movie.
I had absolutely no idea, and I'm sorry about that.
But like I think it doesn't matter because like
Not in this case.
because that opening scene, like they do a pretty good job kind of like hinting, like because the whole opening scene is where they're trying to get that giant box in.
Yeah.
I would have figured it out. Like, I'm pretty sure that's a vampire. But
Mhm.
then, like, after that scene when the two movers, like, they drive away and it cuts to black and you get that split second where you actually see Barlow, I'm like, oh,
There's
I guess it's a
it's
vampire movie. Okay.
it's such a weird thing. This movie does such a weird thing where it's like, one, you can tell that it's just been edited all to hell, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, okay, like there are characters who feel like they should have like a sense of history and a weight
Hmm.
to their relationship, but they really don't.
Yeah.
But they're acting like it.
Yeah.
Um, so you've got all these things, and it's like it does this weird thing where it's like it's technically the story, but it's all about where you start, and the just the fact that we start in the antique shop with like, oh yeah, Straker, the human familiar, is negotiating to get like the coffin there, and it's just like
Horrible. Terrible.
it's weird. It's such a weird intro to the story
And
because
that
really
guy
it's
does not
like,
belong in this movie. I'm like,
oh, this is for a little bit later. Every single actor is acting like they're in a different movie, and it's
yes.
baffling to
I'm
me.
like, what genre are they in? Him, I could understand because he's like the thrall, you know. He's probably super old, but still, I'm like
Yeah, but
that
he never
opening.
acts like it. He's like he's all boisterous and flamboyant and
Yeah,
all these things, and it's like that's not who
that
this
opening
guy
scene. I had
is.
no idea what year this was. I was like, okay,
Yeah,
weird. But then
yeah,
you see the truck. I'm like, okay, so it's still modern-ish, you
yeah.
know. But then I don't. What? When was this? When?
This is like the 70s.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
but that opening scene, like, I could not tell when this was. I'm like, is this like a
yeah,
flashback? Like, did they come in the 1800s? And then you see the moving truck. I'm like, okay, all right, this is decades old, not like a century old.
yeah,
Because, yeah,
yeah.
that guy, yeah.
Yeah, man, like yeah, it's just such a weird thing, and like
Yeah.
they did see. It's interesting because like I was talking to Mickey about this. I figured out what uh that the Toby Hooper 70 Salem's Lot is to the book what David Lynch's Dune is to the Dune book. And
Hmm.
it's essentially the book. We got most of the beats. We got most of the characters, and we did it all in about 3 hours, you know? And it's like, it's fine. It's passable. It's not perfect, but it's passable. This feels like it's speed running both the book and the 70s miniseries.
Hmm.
It's taking from both, but not really understanding what made either of them scary.
Oh,
And why these characters are supposed to work at all, you know?
yeah. So, well, no, no. I said yeah, but no, I don't know.
Okay.
So my thing is, I got two questions that I need answered
Okay.
to go on.
Okay.
One is, well, like I just found out that the other two versions were miniseries. I was like, oh,
Mhm.
okay.
Mhm.
So I guess, do you think this would have worked better as a miniseries? Because just watching this movie, I'm
Mm.
like, I don't know how you could stretch this. Oh, and then they just released the article that like the original cut was 3 hours, and they made him cut it down. I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't. I'm watching this like I don't know how you can make it any longer. I don't know how I can stretch it. So that's my first question. Would this have worked better as a miniseries?
Okay.
Second question is, what? How exactly? Because you hinted at this earlier. How exactly was this made for a modern audience? Like, what was different from the for this than the other versions?
Okay. Okay. So, first question. I think I don't know because I'm very of the mind. It's like you're making a movie and you're going into this making a movie. So I don't want you to I don't want to say that like, oh yeah, like just go ahead and make it a mini series because I think that changes it completely. And I think
Hmm.
you're gonna have to restructure so much of it. But since it feels like there's so much that's on the cutting room floor, we could have theoretically just done what those other miniseries did and just say, hey, we're going to air this on 2 nights. We're going to split it in half.
Yeah.
Here's clear part one and clear part two. I think that would have been fine. And maybe
Hmm.
that would have been cool because then it gives something for people to talk about it. It's like, hey, did you see part one of it. Like, oh yeah, I thought it was
Mm,
really good. I wonder if they're going to get to that in the second half. Like, I think that would be
yeah.
cool. And that's kind of the age that we're in now.
Hmm.
Like you see it a lot with shows that air on like Disney or something where it's like, yeah, it's one episode a week now, and now we get the conversation rolling, and now we're excited for next week. It's just like TV. It's
Especially the
just like how TV
season.
used to be.
The first
Yeah.
Friday of October, you drop part one, and
Yeah.
then like the third Friday or whatever, like a week before Halloween, you drop part two. So people are talking about it throughout the Halloween season.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I think that would have been perfect.
So, do you think the 3 hour version of this movie would have worked better than this 2 hour?
I I think it would have been I think it would have been worthwhile.
Okay.
I think it would have been worthwhile to just to release it,
Yeah.
because what I feel like what I feel like was cut was a lot of the character stuff, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of just like character progression and arcs, because really nobody has an arc in this.
No, they
Everybody
don't.
is just sort of doing stuff. The, the whole reason why Ben, our supposed protagonist, comes back to Salem's Lot is because he wants to write about the Marsden house.
Mm-hmm.
And you have there's vague connections. They sort of allude to it and stuff, that he's just researching the house and he's a little obsessed with it. But they never answer why.
They just drop
And
it from the
they
film.
and they
Like
and they
it's never
drop it.
mentioned again.
What's interesting is that they cast the guy who owned the house, Hubie Marsden. They
Hmm.
cast the guy, and he's listed in the credits, but he's nowhere in the movie.
Oh, interesting.
So what that tells me is that they filmed scenes with Hubie Marsden. And part of the book, I'll try not to go on too long a tangent, but that's uh it's a huge thing, because the Marsden house sits at the top of the hill in Salem's Lot. You're supposed to be able to see it from every point in the town. Like,
Yeah.
no matter where you are, like, you're gonna see the Marsden house. It's haunted, and it's haunted in a way that's not outright.
Hmm.
It's like there are no literal ghosts there. Ben, as a kid, went into the house, and I think it was on a dare or something like that, but he went into the house and he swears up and down that he saw the ghost of Hubie Marsden. Now, Hubie Marsden is described as a mobster who got out of the life, but kind of started to like seep back into it just little by little. I think he was like bootlegging and
Hmm.
using the house as like a front, and everything caught up with him. And so one night he kills his wife and he kills himself,
Mm.
and it casts such a shadow over the community, but it's such a small town that it's like, small towns do what small towns do. They talk, and then they don't talk about it again. It's it's such a thing. So the fact that Ben is going back because he lost his parents so young,
Yeah.
because he feels listless and aimless, he's trying to reconnect with himself, and the thing that he's looking for, he believes, is in the Marsden house.
Hmm.
So the fact that somebody else is already living there, he's like, well, that's weird. I know that place is haunted. Who in their right mind would live in the Marsden house?
Yeah.
And that clues him in immediately that like there's something not right going on here, but I
Hmm.
don't know what it is. And then of course he's falling in love, so it's the two
Yeah.
things. He's trying not to think about it, but he's thinking about it too much. But you'd never get any of that in this movie.
No,
He
you
just kind of
don't.
shows up
Like
and is just sort of there.
that's kind of my big like one of my big things. Like I don't understand. Like you don't want to like fall into the trappings of like what a movie should or shouldn't be.
Sure, sure.
But at the same time, I'm watching a movie with a protagonist who, like, I like him. And what's his name? Lewis Pullman.
Lewis Pullman.
Lewis
Yeah.
Pullman. He did a good job. But he just wasn't given much. And I'm like, why is this guy the lead?
Mhm.
Especially because, again, and it's going back to what we're saying. There's no character arcs. There's no character in this.
Yeah.
We're seeing. We're not really seeing the town disappear. It's just like from one scene to the next, everyone's dead.
Yeah,
I wish we
yeah.
would have got more of that. I wish we would have seen them, be around less and less. But I feel like it would have been much better if we had our protagonist was from the town. You know,
Hmm.
now that sounds, you know, I think it's actually less to do with Stephen King's story and more to do with this version of the movie. Because from what it sounds like, they're cutting a lot of our protagonist's backstory, who has a
Yeah,
connection to this town,
yeah.
and it's a traditional story. Small town boy leaves, comes back.
Hmm.
He's either going to save the galaxy or he's going to have to kill a vampire. I'm like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
all right. So like, I'm not trying to like critique Stephen King's novel, but just like the film they presented us with, like Ben wasn't your lead for this. If you're going to cut that backstory away, he even has a very interesting moment when they first get back to the Marsden house and like he's looking around. It's kind of like, wow, so this is what this place looks like. It
Mm,
almost looks like he's
hmm.
in awe, and I'm like, that's interesting. And I was like, oh yeah, why is he here? Oh, I'm like, oh yeah, they completely just dropped that
Yeah,
storyline. Um,
yeah.
because before I knew that about him, I was gonna say Susie should have been the main character. You know,
Which
because
is interesting because oh, go ahead, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say one, I really like their romance. I thought it was really cute. One of
Hmm.
the stronger points of the film. But also, we need to care about the people who are going missing and the people who are dying.
Yeah,
I like the little
yeah.
kids because we got them for a few scenes. So when we see them get taken out, I'm like, oh, that sucks, man. Who's the first one? Ralphie?
Ralphie.
Poor Ralphie.
I know.
I'm like, dude, he's a cute little kid. I'm like, no way. Oh, and that I want to bring up Ralphie later. Remind me before we
Okay.
finish. But yeah, like we need to care about them. So we care about them because we got to see them through Mark's eyes. He's also an outsider. So that's
Yeah.
how we got to care about the kids. Everyone else, not really. And what we did get, though, I feel like was the strongest parts of the film. The relationship between Ben and Susie.
Hmm.
Probably my favorite part of the whole movie was everything with uh, Mike, because we see Mike
Oh, yeah,
go
yeah.
from just a dude to getting attacked to getting sick to dying to turning. We get his whole story right there.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
most of it is told through Matt's eyes.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like, that's cool because I don't know what the relationship is. I'm assuming he's like a former student of Matt.
Yes.
And he's just a super nice guy who, like, you're rooting for. And because I also like the way he breaks up the fight in the beginning. Like, they're like, oh, this is the cool teacher. Like, he's going to give you tough love, but there's like a kindness in that, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, especially when you see all the other younger teachers just ignoring everything, like, this is the
Hmm.
guy who's going to go out his way because he knows he can help these kids. I'm like, I
Yeah.
like this guy. So I was terrified because Mike is bit. He's changing. You don't know how far along the process he is. You don't know when he's going to turn on Matt. So, like, I was scared. I was scared that whole
Hmm.
time Mike was
Hmm.
there. And then after Mike dies, I'm like, all right, he's going to jump up, right? I'm like, he's going to jump up. I know it. I
Hmm.
know it.
Hmm.
So that whole time I was scared. Nowhere else in the movie. The main
Yeah.
villain of the movie was just, he looked cool, but there was nothing really unique or original.
No,
He
he
could have
didn't.
stepped out of Underworld and I wouldn't have told the difference.
Yeah,
But
exactly. No, he didn't look cool. It's crazy to me that you can't beat makeup effects from the 70s. Like the
yeah,
Barlow in the 70s, iconic, classic.
yeah,
This guy looks like a weird Party City knockoff.
yeah,
I
yeah.
just no, like no,
I
I'm yeah.
and
Anyway,
again, like when Mike and the other kids, the thralls are more terrifying than your villain, you got a problem. Also,
yes.
because there was no villain, he was just always in the shadow and always referred to.
Mhm.
Susie's mom was more terrified because she was sick with that shotgun, man.
Dude, yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, dude, I'm like,
Not how Dr. Cody goes in the book, but I was like, well, That's
that was a shocking
effective.
moment to
That
me. I
was
was like,
that was probably the most shocking part of the movie. I was like, oh,
yeah.
okay, sure.
Yeah, I was just
Yeah,
like, dude,
crazy.
like all the thralls are better vampires than Barlow,
hmm
and I'm
Which
like,
like which gets to me because like so Stephen King's whole conceit uh was how what would happen if Dracula came to this country?
right,
And he figured out that like okay, he wouldn't go to New York because like it's too busy, it's too modern. And
yeah,
even though Dracula loves to be seen as modern, to be seen as worldly, at the start of the book he's trapped by his country. He's trapped by time.
hmm
He can't find a way to get out. So where he would go is something that resembles the home country,
hmm
someplace where it wouldn't be far-fetched for people to just leave or go missing, and where it would become very easy for a whole town to just disappear.
yeah, yeah,
And the entire so when you read Salem's Lot, it really is this idea of like this is how you lose a small town, and this is how easy it is for people to just go missing, and how easy it is for a town that has life but isn't bustling, isn't
hmm
full of life, a town that has life to just suddenly die.
yeah,
And it's not suddenly, it's just it's slow, and it takes time, it takes weeks, it takes months. When you're
and
reading Salem's Lot, it's an apocalypse story, and you have no idea that it's an apocalypse story until you're in it,
yeah,
until 20 people are gone and you're like, I didn't even realize
and
that.
we
Like
never get
it's
that.
so crazy. Yeah, and you never get that.
We get that from the family because like Ralphie goes missing,
Ralphie goes
and like a
missing.
week goes by. I'm like, okay, cool, and
Yeah.
then the
And
second
then
kid
his brother
gets
dies
sick and
or
dies. I'm
gets
like,
sick. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, like something weird is happening, and then the mom just ends up dead. You're like,
Yeah.
dude, okay, like red flags need or like red flags, red alarms need to be going off. Red alarms, red alerts. There you go.
Red flags, red alerts,
Oh,
all
also
of
because
them.
William Sadler was like the sheriff in a very like throwaway role, and I'm like, oh,
Dude,
that
yeah.
sucks,
And
dude. Like this guy's like an icon.
which is interesting because like the Parkins Gillespie he's supposed to be like our inspector. He's supposed to be like, something's
Yeah.
not right here in the lot, you know? Like he's like he is intuitive, but the thing about him is which I was really glad that they kind of like just alluded to it, is that like he does leave. He is a
Yeah.
coward, you know,
Yeah.
but it's sort of like is it cowardly in the face of this? In the
Right.
face of the world coming to an end? Like
Yeah.
it's like that's the thing, like it's a gradual progression, whereas this just feels like it's exactly like you said. It's like from scene to scene, the town is gone, and then it's like,
Yeah.
well, I'm out of here. And it's like, no, like that, like there's a subtlety. You need to be subtle with something like this.
And then his actual death sucked because it was all CG, and you're like,
Oh,
oh, I'm like,
like
I was like, is that? I guess that's the sheriff. I'm like, okay.
for such a bad joke, like
I thought it could. That scene could have been done well because
it
I'm
could have
like,
been done well.
I'm
Yeah,
like, that is pretty ballsy.
that feels
and like
that
very
feels like a
almost like
reshoot kind of thing.
almost like sacrilegious. Like a vampire would throw a body through a church
Mhm.
window because they know they can't get in. You
Yeah,
know?
which is something I do want to touch on because it's a you said it best that Barlow has no presence
Yeah.
in the movie, and like all his thralls have a more menacing feel to them than he does. And I get it that, you know, less is more, right? The
Right.
more you see a character, the more you hear them speak, it's like, okay, like you really have to do a lot to convince people, especially when it's a vampire, especially when it's supposed to be a big menacing threat.
hmm
Like less is supposed to be more. The way the way he's treated in the novel, and the way he does things in the novel, it is like these scenes of terror, and then he's withdrawn, and then you go chapters without anything, and then a
Yeah.
scene of terror, and then that. There's a really great thing that they do where he writes, and he writes these taunting letters, leaving them behind at these different places for our a group of hunters to find.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's, because he's supposed to be like Dracula, and Dracula is an epistolary story, which is all told in letters and journals and newspaper clippings. So it's a fun way to sort of harken back to that, but it's also a way to say, like, he's old world, and
Yeah.
he knows that he's better than these people, you know? And it's less of a thing of like, oh, I'm gloating without, I'm gloating just to gloat. It's like, no, he's gloating because he knows that you're inept, and
Hmm.
he knows before you even know that you're not going to see what's coming until it's 2 feet in front of you.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a bit in, I'll just say it here because to my knowledge they haven't done this in any of the other adaptations. I can't speak for the 2000s miniseries with Rob Lowe because I haven't seen it yet, but they didn't do it in the Toby Hooper version, and I was really hoping that they would do it here, and they didn't. So Dr. Cody dies differently in the book,
Hmm.
and it's one of the best and one of the most gruesome kills I've ever read. So a lot of different things have to happen, but essentially the gang splits up, and Dr. Cody and Mark are kind of going to different houses to try and like they're looking for vampires. They're staking vampires along the way. They're trying to find survivors.
Hmm.
They're not finding much. They end up going to this house, and they're going to go into the basement. They're mid conversation. Mark turns away and is looking for like batteries for a flashlight. He doesn't see Dr. Cody leave his field of vision. He just hears the door to the basement open, and Dr. Cody screams and is silenced. And Mark turns back, sees the empty door frame, runs to the door frame, and is struggling to turn the flashlight on. And as he turns the flashlight on, he sees that the vampires have removed the stairs to the basement. And Mark turns back and sees all of the kitchen drawers are open, and all of the utensils are on the ground, but there's no kitchen knives.
Hmm.
And he looks back, and as he turns the flashlight on, sees that the vampires have created essentially this like trap with all of the kitchen knives sticking up,
Oof.
and Dr. Cody just falls into it and is just slowly bleeding out.
Oh God. That
And I'm like,
sucks. Who are they?
like,
Kevin McAllister?
right, and it's so crazy because like Barlow even has a thing where he's like he talks to them for a second and just like, yes, you have to remove them. They won't, like, it's essentially remove these things. They won't see this coming. But you have no idea where this is.
Mm.
You have no idea where they're at when he's saying this. Like, he's
Hmm.
just telling them to this to the one of the rare instances where it's almost a POV for Barlow.
Hmm.
So yeah, so then when you're reading in the book, you're like, oh, oh no, and then you're instantly worried because you're like, sun is coming down and Mark is now alone. Mark,
Yeah.
get out of there. Like, so you're terrified the whole time.
Yeah.
And I think going back to your second question that you asked, I think that's kind of the thing that I mean when I say that like this needed to be updated for modern audiences, but the way they decided to update this was more in just how we're telling the story. And how we're telling the story is that we're doing it at a breakneck speed. We're doing it with a big Hollywood flourish of a finish where, hey, we're gonna have a big showdown in the drive-in, and
Hmm.
cars are gonna be whizzing by, vampires are gonna be popping out of trunks, and the screen's coming down and all this stuff. And it's noisy. It's so noisy. Just audibly and visually
Hmm.
that you can hardly you can hardly feel anything. You don't feel any worry at this point. This almost feels like if you just change the music a little bit, it feels like it could be like in a Van Helsing or in a Brendan Fraser mummy movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it sucks because, then it's like, hey, like we get a moment that's supposed to be powerful, Ben stabbing the vampiric Susan, and then as she's dying she cries and then obliterates the dust or whatever. It's like this is supposed to be sad, because
Mm-hmm.
we're supposed to be rooting for these characters, but that's not there. And it's just an
Yeah.
afterthought because now, well, I stabbed this my girlfriend and I'm real sad about it, but can't feel sad because I gotta go kill this
Yeah.
vampire. And it's just like I want to see especially after stuff like Midnight Mass and 30 Days of Night and even like the Fright Night remakes and even Twilight. Like we've gotten so many different iterations of vampires since the novel was written, since
Yeah.
Dracula was written, that we're telling this story for a modern audience, but the modern audience isn't scared of vampires.
Yeah.
And
Right. Right.
sure, I think it's a tall order to ask, like, hey, we got to make people scared of these things again. I think you just have to make them menacing. And I think you just have to do it in a way that's like they were on the right track with most of the stuff that's here. I just think it's like this it's too much like, oh, we're going to be jumping and oh, we're going to be in the shadows for the most part. It's like no, like
Yeah.
the menace of the vampire is that they can be anyone and they are anyone. They like they're your neighbor. They're the
Yeah.
person that they're your mechanic. So if I go to
Mm-hmm.
my mechanic and like, hey, how come you haven't closed up shop? Like, oh, what's the point? What's the use? Like, why don't you come on in? Like all this stuff. Like it's the menace that could be next door.
I'm gonna one up you and say it's even easier. You just got to give us characters that we care about.
I mean, yeah, that's
You know,
exactly right too.
again, the Mike stuff was the best stuff of the movie. When
Yeah,
Matt sees him in the bar, just sitting there, and you see a silhouette in darkness, I'm like, dude, do not go into that corner. Do
yeah,
not go into that corner. And he's
yeah,
talking to him. He's like, are you okay? You don't look so good. I'm like, dude, he's gonna kill you. And then like Mike leans forward and says something. I'm like, oh God. I'm like, he hasn't turned yet. I instantly got
hmm,
even more scared because I'm like, oh no. Oh, like they're saving the turn. Like, when is he
yep,
gonna turn? I was like, oh dude, like that, like
yeah.
I don't know, man. Like, yeah, I feel like they had the puzzle pieces. They just didn't know how to put the puzzle together. So, okay, so what was you said they changed the third act completely. What's the third act supposed to be then?
I mean, uh, I, I can see why they did it because it's not very cinematic,
Hmm.
but um so essentially so again like a lot of stuff has to be a little different, but to kind of run through it, um they get the best of Straker in the Marsden I'm sorry, Mark gets the best of Straker in the Marsden house. Susie is with Mark, not Matt. Susie gets
Okay.
captured and we don't know what happens to her.
Mm,
Mark escapes, gets Ben, Matt, and Dr. Cody to be like, hey, like we gotta go, like we gotta go do this. And then they all go back and they find Straker uh uh essentially like hung.
mm,
And they find Barlow's note that is like, saying that like he failed me, but I've still left you like a gift.
mm.
And the gift is Susan, and she's a vampire.
Oh
And it's a
crap.
whole thing, and Ben's like, I can't do this, like I don't have to do this. So Ben has to do it, and then for the rest of the novel he's just like he's breaking, like he's already broken but he can't
Mm,
admit it to himself, and so
hmm.
he's just like, I don't know how to do this anymore, like I'm gonna
Yeah.
crack. It's such a it's interesting because it's almost like The Thing,
Hmm.
where not where we don't trust each other, but how sane can you keep, how can you keep your sanity in this? So all
Yeah.
this stuff happens, we lose Cody, we lose Matt, it's very sad because after Mike, he gets admitted to the hospital and he's just there for the rest of the book.
Mm.
But he's like the Van Helsing. He's reading the books and saying, "We've got to go do this. You got to go get Father Callahan. Try to get Callahan on your side."
Oh,
He's
that's a whole
talking,
other
doing all this
thing.
stuff. I'll get to
Yeah.
that. But then he just has a heart attack because he's old.
Oh
He's
crap.
he's much older in the book. But
Yeah.
yeah, like he's there and just the strain of the initial attack, like, oh, Susan's mom comes to kill him, but she gets thwarted pretty easily. But the shock of that kind of leads to him having a heart attack. So he's one of the only people who dies normally in Salem's Lot.
I mean, I guess that's a happy ending for him.
I mean,
Like,
it's well, that's the
ah,
thing. It's not. It's just like, oh, that sucks. You know, it's like we keep
yeah.
losing our members, like we keep losing these people. So anyway, they end up finding where Barlow is.
Hmm.
And it's kind of a whole thing, but they end up finding where Barlow is, and they're trying to beat the sun. Same thing, but there's just more vampires around them. There's more
Yeah.
vampires, and so it's just Mark and Ben, and they finally like they stake him in his coffin as he's coming out,
Hmm.
but they stake him. They accidentally set the house on fire, but it's all of the other vampires are still there,
Hmm.
and they're not just in the house; they're in the town. So Mark and Ben get in the car and speed the hell out of there before the sun goes down, and they're gone.
Hmm.
Because the book opens up with them already gone. Like say like the events of the book have happened, and they
Oh,
keep
okay.
talking about something happening that like all these people are dead or missing, like some
Yeah.
people have left. And then we catch up at the end where it's like they're already gone, but they decide like we have to go back because we have to finish it. And it's a bigger thing. Again, like they mention it very briefly, but there was a
Hmm.
fire that happened like a couple decades before, and essentially they reenact that and they burn the town down to sort of
Oh,
cleanse
nice.
the whole thing.
You see,
Um,
because that's my thing too. Like, it's never really established what the rules are for the vampires here. Like
yeah,
Matt knows a lot of vampire stuff, which they never explain in the movie, and I'm like,
yeah,
okay, that's interesting.
yeah.
But even then, like, there's so much like vampire stories and lore. Like, it's almost like a requirement. Like you have to explain. Like,
It's it's a thing. Yeah, it's a thing that I noticed in vampire movies, a little bit less so in werewolf movies, because I kind of caught it when I watched Dog Soldiers last year, and they really quickly just go through the whole like, okay, well, like what can kill a werewolf? Silver, all this stuff, and then they're just like, who cares? Just shoot everything we got at them. Just stab them as much as you can. It doesn't matter. And then the movie keeps going, and you're like, yeah, this is good. I like
yeah, but
that.
does it work? Like,
Not really, but but then they find silver and they're like, oh, and then that
and that
works. And they're
worked.
like,
Okay,
oh,
that's
okay,
cool.
cool. Like, yeah, so
Yeah.
that's cool. But yeah, with vampire movies, you're right. It's like we have to figure out, okay, can these vampires walk in sunlight? No, they can't. Okay, can
Mhm.
holy water affect them? No, okay, like we're not doing that. It's oh, like it's usually it's beheading or staking. Like those are the
Yeah.
only things. And we get nary any of that. I think they do it a little too much in the book,
Hmm.
maybe the miniseries, but here it's like, yeah, it's almost like, oh yeah, we're speeding through it, and here we go.
Yeah, it's like we need to know like the rules. Like, are these vampires that we can fight? You
Yeah,
know, are these vampires that we can't fight? We just got to run.
yeah, yeah.
Can they be killed? Apparently, they can be killed by a stake to the heart.
Hmm.
Apparently, every vampire's heart is in a different body location. Because I don't think
Hmm.
anyone was stabbed in the same place twice, and it was pissing
Yeah,
me off. Two, we see several vampires get staked, and then it just cuts, and I was like, oh, okay. Do they explode like in Buffy? Like, do they just turn to ash? I was expecting like, oh, it's gonna be a reveal. No, we
no,
finally. I think finally toward in the third act we finally see someone get. Oh, I think it's Mike. We finally see someone get staked, and the camera stays on them, and they just die. I was like, oh.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay. I thought it like they were gonna like explode or turn into dust or something. I was like, oh, okay. I thought there
Yeah.
was a reason we were cutting and not showing the vampires actually die. No.
Well, cause I just realized as you're talking about it, only reason the vampires explode in this, two reasons. Sunlight at the end,
Right.
and when they're in the presence of the crucifix. Because that's why the mom at the morgue dies. They
Oh,
like
that's
they
right.
successfully like throw her off and then she like
Well,
explodes into
but
light.
you see, that was the same thing. Like she
But
kind of
again, like the rules
she
aren't
no,
established.
like but like the way it's shot, like she gets like blown off of the doctor, and then
Yeah.
the next shot, it's just like her gown. So like I didn't know if she exploded
Oh, you're
or if
right.
she disappeared because I
You're
was
right.
thinking she escaped. I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
well, I don't know, maybe she turned into dust and flew away. Like
yeah.
again, we don't know the rules. So I didn't even think about that. I was like, oh, okay, I guess that the cross did kill her. But yeah, man, it was just I don't even know if the creators knew the rules because it was never really set and it seemed to kind of change. There's the one
Hmm.
scene where Mike is trying to kill him and he's like, I renounce my invitation and he gets sucked out. I was
Oh,
like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
cool. You're supposed to the only way they should enter your home is
As
if
if
you
they're
invite them
invited.
in. That's
Yeah.
classic vampire lore, but that's never explained through the movie.
Hmm.
Also, no one really gets invited in. You just open the window and they accept that as an invitation.
Well, I mean, that was the whole like hypnotism thing. Like like the kids, that like the kid who's at Mark's window. He's just
Yeah,
like, open the window, Mark, and
but
you can see it's weird, and I don't like it because they do the thing where it's like they glaze over Mark's eyes, and he's got like this bad CG like
yeah,
gray over his
yeah,
eyes, and that's oh he's hypnotized. So and
yeah.
it's like
And
I
so I'm
yeah,
like, wait a second.
it's a lot of visual stuff that
I'm
you're
like,
just like.
does the vampire actually need to be invited then if they could just hypnotize you to do it? Like
Yeah,
that kind of leads me to believe it's not actually an invitation, it's just opening the door.
yeah.
You know? Why don't they just open the window? Like, I don't it's so many things. So there's no rules on the hypnotism stuff. Are the thralls just like all hypnotized? Like again, they're all like, Mr. Barlow would like to meet you, blah blah blah. I'm like, I
Mhm.
needed more because like poor Ralphie, he just gets killed. He's
Yeah.
sacrificed. But then his brother becomes the thrall. And I'm like, is it hypnotism? Like, is the brother being controlled? Or is it like the seduction of power? Like I just don't understand. And I wish I did, because in my mind, if my little brother was killed and then I was turned into a thrall, like first thing I'm doing is I'm killing the guy who went after my brother. I'm using my vampire. I'll probably I'm a vampire, so I'm gonna be evil. I'm gonna be corrupt, and I'm gonna
Mhm.
use all of that to fight Barlow. I would probably
Mhm.
die, but it's just like again, like, do you become more primal, more savage? Then I'd feel like that would be a real excuse, like, you
Mhm.
killed my brother. Like,
Yeah.
there's just so many questions I have.
I don't think they outright state it in the book. But I do know that like once Barlow is gone, once they kill him, they do kind of say a thing where it's like life kind of goes back to the way it was. So it's the thing is like not everybody knows that this is happening, right? Like there are people who are so shut up or so just like closed off. They're just like something's up, but I don't know what's really happening.
So there's
Because
survivors?
sort of,
Oh,
but that's
jeez.
the see, but that's the thing about the book is that like we get so many chapters about other people, and it's like yeah, like it's just normal people. Some are
Yeah,
bad, some are fine, some are worse than others.
yeah,
uh and every time we jump back to them, there's a reason for it. It's like okay, you're getting your comeuppance,
yeah.
or just something like how easy is it for somebody to disappear, like things like that. When we get to the end, we've gotten to the point where it's like, yeah, people are kind of going back. So the vampires retain part of their consciousness, but it's a thing that like, oh, I need to talk to you, but can you come over because I'm not feeling well? And
Yeah,
then they come
yeah.
in and then they feed,
See,
so then
they
it's like,
invite you in.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's
So
smart.
it's all, yeah, so it's all these little things, and I'm like, yeah, like that would make sense that like there's no master anymore, but that doesn't
Yeah.
mean that they just puff up in smoke. Like
Well,
they
that's what I was
still
thinking
live.
too. Like, do they all die? Like, I don't know.
No,
Those rules are never
no.
established. So that's interesting. So there's probably survivors, vampire survivors out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So there are two technically. There's one direct sequel, and then there's uh a sequel character.
Oh, okay, okay.
So King had a short story. I think it's called One for the Road, that is essentially like these two guys. They're trying to get through the snowed in sort of road. They have to pull off into a bar, so they're just kind of like getting
Hmm.
warm, and then yeah, they're slowly you realize that like vampires have spread out from Salem's Lot.
Yeah.
I haven't read that yet, but I just know that that's like the direct sequel.
Hmm.
The direct sequel character, spoiler alert, again, I don't know why you're still here, but spoiler alert, is Father Callahan.
Interesting.
So Father Callahan has a much more interesting arc in the book.
Hmm.
Uh and I really liked this guy that they got to play him in the movie. I don't know who he is. I've never seen him
Yeah.
before.
So did I.
Um
I like the acting.
but I really liked him, it was really cool because it's like, yeah, Callahan is this priest who's just like kind of going by the numbers at this point,
Yeah.
like
Seems very
be-
jaded.
believes in the faith, but doesn't believe in, yeah, like the institution really.
Right. Hmm.
Um, so when he gets, so when
So
they
I like
bring
him already.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So then when they, bring all this stuff to him, he's just like, this is a serious accusation.
Hmm.
He's kind of part of the group, like towards like the middle and the end a little bit. Because they bring him in and he's like, this is a serious accusation that you're saying, like, I need evidence. I need to see these things. So they go up to the Marsden house, they stake Susie, and he's just like, oh, no, no, no. So what it is this. They He has them all come to the church. He blesses them and then hears their confessions. And then they go up to the Marsden house. They stake Susie, and he's like, okay, this is real. We have to convince people to find shelter or leave. So he goes with Mark to his house
Hmm.
to try and convince his parents. And Mark's parents are just regular parents. They're like, no, he's into spooky stuff.
Yeah.
It's warping his mind. Barlow breaks through the window, breaks through the window, but it's just like his cape, like his robe,
Mm.
breaks through the window, immediately erupts, grabs Mark's parents' by the head and smacks them together, and they're dead.
Oh God.
Just a
Okay.
sickening snap, and he's like, so Mark's there, he's freaking out, he's so scared. Callahan whips out his cross. Now, the thing that kind of got me upset in this movie is that they overused the cross effect. Even though I think it's a brilliant effect,
Yeah.
there's a reason why. There's a reason why this chapter was my favorite chapter in the book. There's a reason why Callahan is the only one who should be able to do this. He pulls out his crucifix, and his crucifix erupts in blinding white holy light
Mm.
because he is an agent of the church. He is
Hmm.
sanctioned by the church. He knew from the outset that he might have to face this. He is the only character. He's essentially the cleric. He's the party's
Yeah.
cleric.
Yeah.
No other character should be able to wield the holy symbol like this. Like, sure, it might like kind of glow, but that's the thing. Like, he's the cleric fighting the evil, the ancient evil, and him and Barlow are trading blows verbally, saying all these things. And as they're going, like Barlow's recoiling in the light, but he's pushing forward and is convict like he has this conviction.
Hmm.
And Callahan is constantly like pulling back, pulling back. And Mark leaves, swearing vengeance. He leaves. And then when it's just Callahan and Barlow alone, Barlow outwits him and makes him lose his nerve and
Hmm.
makes him realize that he isn't up to task. He isn't up for the battle. And the cross begins to dim in light to the point where now he throws the cross down because it means nothing. It's not powerful anymore.
Hmm.
And then he bites him, and you're like, damn, he's dead. Like, doesn't matter. Mark has to run off doing all these things. We get like 2 more chapters later, and then Callahan shows up again at the bus stop,
Hmm.
scares the woman who's working as the teller, and essentially it's just like, I think you should close early. And she's like, I will, Father, I will, because like she sees that something's not right in him. And she's like,
Hmm.
I will, but you need to get out of here. So he buys his bus ticket and gets on the first bus out of Salem's Lot
Mm.
and is gone. And never shows up again. And you're like,
A vampire priest?
this is
I
incredible.
love this.
So King had said that he wanted to do a sequel,
Hmm.
and he left Father Callahan as a character to potentially come back to, as like, oh yeah, like
Yeah.
I think I'll talk about, or I think I'll follow him or do something like that. Spoilers now for the Dark Tower.
That's right. Okay, I forgot about this.
As Roland and his quartet are going out, and trying to hunt down the man in black and do all these things, who shows up in the wasteland?
Yeah.
But the vampire priest himself, Father Callahan.
Hmm.
And he has his whole arc of essentially being a man of faith whilst being a demon and having to vanquish these evils in order to prove himself worthy and in order to atone for the sins of failing the town that he left behind. And then King was like, yeah, that's pretty good. I'm not to forget a sequel. Like, that's great. And I'm like, you know what? Fair.
I'm not touching this again.
It's like, honestly, good for you, man. Like,
That is
there's
so
nothing
cool,
else
man.
left. And I'm like, that's such a badass idea. So I kind of judge every adaptation by how well they do Callahan.
Yeah.
And this one is a step above the 70s one, because the 70s one just kind of comes in and doesn't do much.
Well, that's why
No.
I'm glad we kind of saved him for the end, mostly because I forgot about him. But like, because I really like that concept, and like, I hate this idea. It's because we're all jaded by the world around us. I hate the idea that like there's this kind of hopelessness feeling to a lot of these stories. You know, and it's like,
yeah.
we're gonna tell a story about true evil, and not evil in the sense of like, oh, hell is here on earth, or all men are evil. No, like, we're talking about like a vampire,
Yeah.
something that's like this kind of manifestation of like all our fears into like this character. If we're gonna take that leap of faith and just jump into this fantastical fictional universe where vampires are real, I think the cardinal sin you could make is that none of the holy stuff works on it.
Yeah.
And I've seen that before. I'm like, that kind of just disproves the whole thing. Because like, when you think of like real world histories and stories, and where like all our ideas and ideologies about what true evil is, all of that stuff kind of comes from the same place where like all our religions come from, and all the ideas of like a higher power, they kind of go hand in hand. So it's kind of like you're purposely not looking at that stuff because you just want to focus on the bad stuff.
Yeah.
And it just feels like lazy storytelling. And that's why I like the concept of Father Callahan being the only one who has the fiery cross. Even though he is this man of like losing his conviction, it's still there. He's still trying. And like, I love that. You can't have a world with pure evil and not have the opposite. I don't know what you want to call it. Pure good? I don't know. But it's like it has to go hand in hand. And
Yeah.
but I think there's ways to do it right and ways to do it wrong. I mean, I think It's not easy. It's not the Deus Ex Machina. Like, no, it's like it's gonna take a sacrifice and all this stuff, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just really sucks when stuff like that doesn't work. So I'm glad like the crucifixes did work. I don't know if they ever used holy water in this. I know Mark grabbed some, but I don't know if it's ever used.
I don't think so.
Yeah, so I don't know. Like it's just I don't know. Movie could have been better. But okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of vampires, speaking of fighting vampires,
Hmm.
I hope you watchers and listeners aren't tired of this conversation.
Oh
And
no.
not because next week we're going to continue because the spooky movie we're watching next week is Abigail.
Oh, okay.
I've wanted to watch this
Okay.
movie ever since I saw the trailers. I think it just looks so rad. It's
Sure,
about
yeah.
a group of people who kidnap a little girl and they have to protect her in the spooky house for 24 hours.
Hmm.
Things go crazy.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I love like every single person on the cast. It's an all-star cast. So I'm excited to watch it and to check it out. And I don't, it's going to be an interesting comparison, you know?
That it will.
And one of the reasons is like just all the trailers for Abigail. Yeah, they kind of, it's a horror movie. They sell it like that. But to me, it always looks fun. It looks,
Yeah.
the scary movies I like are like the slashers, because you're rooting for the people to get away or to fight back. I really get that vibe from Abigail. Like,
Mhm.
it's a film full of like these badass characters trying to survive a horrible death.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think we're gonna get some like actual fighting back stuff in Abigail. So I'm excited. I'm excited.
I'm excited.
And I think it's just gonna be part 2 of this whole conversation.
How to do vampire movies and how not to do vampire
I hope
movies.
so. I
you
hope
know?
so. Just because like I'm really excited about this.
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking about next week, Abigail.
Hell
Let us know how you felt about this version of Salem's Lot.
I know, like this is kind of different for us because we usually tend to not like go into like too deep on the stuff that we don't like.
Yeah,
We
but-
try to keep it positive. We try to keep it, like loosey goosey. But I think it was just like we both watched this, and I think we're both coming at it from a thing of just like we wanted to really like this.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
there were just there were things that kept it from being for our money, like great.
I think if this was just a bad movie, we would have just moved on and talked about other stuff.
Yeah.
But what really gets me mad is that, like I said earlier, like there's so much in this movie that was good or like had the foundation to be good, and it's just there was no execution. Like they didn't know how to use it.
Yes.
So
Sorry. You wanted to talk about Ralphie.
no, that's what I wanted to talk about earlier. Just the fact that like if that was me, I would want vengeance. Like if
That's
I was
right,
a
that's right.
vampire, I would just be a super evil version of myself. Well, then I would definitely want vengeance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. That's pretty much all I wanted to say about Ralphie. But but yeah, I don't know. So like I also this is like the first time we watched something that neither of us had watched before. So
Yeah.
we didn't know what we were getting into at all.
That's true.
So yeah, there was so much that could have been great about this, and it just wasn't. It just kind of fizzled out. But that being said, you know what? If there is a director's cut, a 3-hour cut, I would probably watch it.
Yeah.
Because I am intrigued enough by this movie. I don't think I'm ever going to watch the other Salem's Lots, but I would watch a director's cut of this because I'm intrigued. Well, maybe I will. Who knows? But real quick, I want to mention I liked a lot of actors, even though they did feel like they were all in different movies. So far, I like Lewis Pullman. I think the actress who plays Susan is Mackenzie Lee, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely adorable. I fell in love with her. She's a Texas girl, so she's automatically one of the most beautiful women on the world. So that's my thoughts on that. But I really like their little romance that was like half a movie.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love their half a romance. So
Yeah. I really shout out to Jordan Preston Carter as Mark. I think
yeah,
you're the
he did
best
good.
actor in this thing.
Just that character alone, I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
who is this kid? Like,
Mark,
he's
yeah, Mark is
badass.
incredible. Yeah. And then also shout out to Alfred Woodard. Even though I don't think you're the right fit in this version of Salem's Lot, I want to see the version of Salem's Lot where everybody's acting on your level. You know?
Yeah, it's just the same with William Sadler. Like those two, like
Yeah, man.
those roles don't justify the acting talent that they had, that they
Yeah.
cast. You know,
Yeah.
like but again, who knows? Maybe they did have a lot more in the 3 hour cut, so
Potentially, yeah.
maybe they'll release that next Halloween. So
Maybe. If they
Yeah.
do, I'll be there.
but yeah, so everyone hit us up, hashtag Lost Legacies. We're also at Lost Legacies podcast at gmail.com, I believe. I'm on Twitter at _Matt Jimenez and on Instagram at Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Real, that's REEL, Texas Weirdo.
So until next week, I didn't want to say get lost, but I didn't know what. I haven't come up with something else.
Suck it.
Suck it.
Wait,
Until
no,
next
that's-
week.
That's bad. I'm sorry. No.
No,
I don't-
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, if you want.
I like it. Until next week, suck it.
Suck it.
But this means we'll have to have a new one next week as well.
Oh, man. Abigail it.